He said it so softly that only I heard it. I'm done. The candle between us flickered, throwing a thin shadow across his face, and for a moment I wondered if I'd imagined the words. The waiter was pouring wine. The pianist hit a wrong note and corrected himself. The restaurant hummed like nothing in my life had just cracked open. I didn't flinch. I didn't ask what he meant. I just smiled at the waiter and thanked him, and let our anniversary dinner keep going cold. We had been married 12 years. 12 anniversaries, if you counted the first one when we ate pizza on the floor because we were broke and happy. This one was supposed to be different. He chose the restaurant, a quiet place with linen tablecloths and a view of the river. He even dressed well, charcoal jacket, the watch I gave him after my first promotion. I wore the red dress he liked, the one he used to say made the room stop. Looking back, that should have been my first warning. He hadn't said a word about it. When he whispered those words, he didn't look angry. That scared me more. He looked relieved, like someone finally setting down a heavy bag. I felt a heat behind my eyes, but I held it there. Years of practice had taught me that silence could be armor. I reached for my water, took a careful sip, and asked him if he wanted dessert. He blinked, surprised. Did you hear me? I did, I said. Chocolate soufflé or the pear tart? His mouth opened, then closed. He laughed under his breath, shaking his head as if I were the unreasonable one. I can't do this anymore, he said, louder now. We're pretending, you know it. I nodded slowly, as if agreeing with something trivial. Inside, my mind was already moving, pretending. I thought of the late nights at the office he said were deadlines. The new passcode on his phone. The way he'd started calling me buddy instead of my name. The way he'd stopped fighting. People think yelling is the end, but silence is where things actually die. Eat, I said gently, pushing his plate closer. You haven't touched it. He stared at me like I was a stranger. Maybe I was becoming one. The waiter returned, asking if everything was all right. My husband smiled too quickly and said yes. I smiled slower and said yes, thank you, everything was perfect. On the drive home, he tried again. He said he'd been unhappy for years. He said he felt unseen. He said he didn't think we wanted the same things anymore. I let him talk. I watched the reflections of streetlights slide across the windshield and counted my breaths. When we pulled into the driveway, I thanked him for dinner and told him I was tired. I slept in the guest room that night, staring at the ceiling, letting my anger cool into something sharper. The next morning, he left early. No note. No text. That was when I opened the shared laptop. We'd always known each other's passwords. Trust, he used to say, should be easy. I didn't go looking for proof right away. I went looking for patterns. Calendar entries labeled Jim. Receipts tucked into folders he forgot to clear. A reservation at a boutique hotel across town, 2 weeks earlier, on a night he said he'd crashed at his friend's place. I took screenshots. I saved them to a folder named Taxes. I brewed coffee and went to work like nothing had happened. Over the next few weeks, I stayed quiet. I cooked. I asked about his day. I laughed in the right places. He started to relax, probably thinking I was in denial, probably thinking I'd beg eventually. Instead, I listened. People reveal themselves when they think they're safe. He mentioned a colleague named Mara once, then twice, then often. How she understood him. How she challenged him. I smiled and said she sounded interesting. At night, I made lists in my head. Assets, accounts. The prenup we signed before I'd built my career, and before he'd learned how much that would bother him. I booked a consultation with a lawyer during my lunch break and brought the folder named Taxes. The lawyer didn't look surprised. She told me I was smart to wait. She told me quiet was powerful. The twist came on a Sunday afternoon when his sister stopped by unannounced. She hugged me too tightly and whispered, "I'm so sorry," like she already knew. We sat at the kitchen island while she talked about family, about loyalty, about how my husband had always been impulsive. Then she slipped. She mentioned Mara's name and added, "At least this time he waited." Waited for what? I asked calmly. Her face went pale. She said she thought I knew. She said he'd been seeing Mara for nearly a year, that the family assumed we were separated because he'd said things were handled. Handled. I thanked her for the information and poured her tea with steady hands. When she left, I sat alone and let the truth settle into place. A year. A year of lies wrapped in politeness. A year of me blaming myself for a distance he was carefully maintaining. That night, I didn't confront him. I emailed our accountant instead. I changed passwords. I forwarded the hotel receipt to myself from his email and archived it. I drafted a timeline. When he came home, he talked about moving out, about wanting this to be amicable. I told him I wanted that too. 2 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning, I asked him to meet me for lunch at the same restaurant by the river. He looked nervous, probably expecting tears. I ordered first. I waited until our plates arrived. Then I slid my phone across the table and played the voicemail his sister had accidentally left me, the one where she mentioned Mara by name again and laughed about how men never learn. He went very still. I know, I said softly. I've known for a while. He tried to explain, he tried to minimize. I listened, then placed a folder between us. Inside were copies, not originals, dates, receipts, notes. A polite letter from my lawyer outlining next steps. I told him I'd already filed. I told him I'd be moving forward quietly. I told him I wished him well. The table went cold between us, just like it had on our anniversary. This time I stood up first. As I walked out, I felt lighter than I had in years. Revenge didn't look like shouting or exposing him online. It looked like control. It looked like peace. If you want to hear more stories like this, stay close. There's always another truth waiting.